How to Build a Second Brain by Tiago Forte has been one of my favorite reads so far this year. And the reason it says 2023 in the title is because I plan to revisit this book at multiple points throughout my life, and I plan to hopefully take away new lessons every single time. But for 2023, here are my top notes and takeaways, my top 4 from this book and my read of it so far. And number 4, I think, is probably one of the more important ones for me, and also the impact it can have on your professional and real life, not just your digital life. So keeping everything simple, let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow learner, Michael Klucas, and on this show, we boil down complex topics into simple, actionable tips. So I chose this book originally. If you can't see, because you'll listen to this on a podcast app of choice, but if you're watching this on YouTube, I currently have the copy with me. So I chose this book because I am someone that's always identified as having a bad memory, and that's, not a very confidence-inspiring type of trait to feel like that is who you are. Like personal projects, birthdays, important dates, things like that have always kind of eluded me to some degree, and that's been very problematic for a variety of reasons. Because one of the things I distinctly remember growing up is the fact that I would have about, 3 to 4 different calendars at any one time because they were all for a different piece of my life. And that helped keep me on track just because I had so much going on. And at the same time, it made it kind of organized, even if it was chaotic, where I had a planner for school, and that was usually bought every single year. I had a calendar that had all of my personal events on there and anything new coming up. Then I had my phone calendar, which was supposed to remind me about birthdays and anything that was far out into the future that I couldn't really put onto a calendar. And then I would have, because we started getting iPads for our school when I got into high school, I would have just, general assignments and everything posted into there, along with that being in the planner. So I had some redundancy between the different apps and just the different things that I use, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't forgetting anything. And I have a lot of projects and goals that I'm working towards. And this book has been a reoccurring recommendation from so many other YouTubers, so many other podcasters, of a good guide and good tool to help organize your life to be more, memorable in terms of the information that you want to hold in your brain versus the information you want to dedicate to an outside resource that won't forget. So it was a bit tempting when I first started hearing about it to feel like, oh, this might be the instant solution to all my problems. But something I want to remind everyone is that, and this is something they mentioned in the book as well, it's only a tool. It's not like a perfect solution because it's not one size fits all. The author Tiago Forte, even in the book, says you have to use this tool as fit for you. There may be pieces of his systems in here that make sense for you, others that don't, and it's up to you to pick and choose how you're going to solve your problem with them. And I wanted to find that balance of using the tools in here to help solve my problem or solve my concern over having poor memory, because I know that's not something that I want to identify with. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I am doing my absolute best to not only compensate for that, but also just improve my memory overall, because there's no real excuse at this point in time for me to say, all right, I just have bad memory. It's no, I have bad memory, but there's ways I can improve it and ways I will improve it. So let's dive into the top 4 takeaways from my first read through for 2023 of Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. So I did mark the pages, and going through it, we're going to start here at page 85. So I don't have an overhead camera at the current moment, which, kind of sucks, but I will fix that at some point in the future. But I'm going to just read it out. So from page 85, I had marked the Cathedral Effect, which studies have shown that the environment we find ourselves in powerfully shapes our thinking. And the note I made to this was that the power of the mind is both fascinating and at the same time very effective in changing how we react, how we think, and how we interact with the world. So going through this, the example that Tiago Forte provides in the book is the fact that if we have high ceilings, it kind of makes us embrace this kind of abstract thinking, more open to concepts and more open to ideas. Versus if we have more condensed and constricted rooms, we tend to think more in the concrete present and what are we doing to be more problem solving as opposed to, again, larger picture, broader ideas. And the reason that this was the first thing that really caught my attention was the fact that you hear often enough is you want to like set yourself up for success. And the way that this is interpreted to me, both in the digital and physical aspects, is you have to set up your space to maximize the outcome you're looking for. So, as always, relating it back to working out, if you wanted to really get into fitness, save money, save time, but make it effective, you'd build out a home gym. You'd start by investing in it. You start by making the space dedicated to it. Maybe there's a certain area in the house that you have your yoga mat in. Maybe it's a certain area in the house that you have your free weights in, a jump rope, whatever you would need, but you're using it to maximize the space for a certain result. And the same thing is true in the digital aspect, where in his system, which is Para, which is P-A-R-A. Let's see here. Yep, there it is. Going through the Para steps is all about, and just like with the physical space, in the book, the author goes over the digital space too for organizing that to maximize certain outcome. And so he has code for this, which is his 4-step method. So capture, you keep what resonates with you. Organize, you save for actionability, you distill, and so you find the essence, you simplify your work, and then you express where you show your work. And so that is setting up your second brain or setting up your digital space to be more effective and be more organized and help maximize a certain result that you're looking for. And if you're watching this on YouTube, comment down below, what do you do to set up your space, either physical or digital, to set yourself up for success? Because I really want to know what you guys are doing now that's working for you versus what may not have worked in the past, because at different points in our lives, some systems may no longer work, and that's perfectly okay. So let me know down in the comments below. So going on from the Cathedral Effect, I had my second note here, which is on pages 108 to 109, where it's introduced on page 108, which is the idea of move quickly and touch lightly. So that was advice that a mentor had given Tiago Forte himself, and the way they advised it was to take the path of least resistance and make progress in short steps. And this is the emphasis that he provides because you don't want to have the creation of your second brain feel like another heavy obligation, make it feel like it's a task you have to dread doing. And taking that into a wider context, I like the way in which he approaches it, because this also works for your life in general, your professional career, your personal life. It's touching lightly or move quickly and touch lightly, because you want to be taking the path of least resistance and still making progress, because ultimately those are the things that drive the needle forward, is the small short steps that accumulate over time. And so for myself personally, whether it is the second brain building or organizing my calendars and getting my life in order, I don't want it to feel like some heavy obligation that I have to do or that I must do. I rather have it be the path of least resistance, and I get to do it because I know it impacts my life in a positive way. And I'm going to link to a video by Matt Diavella about when he actually sat down with Tiago Forte himself and went over the extra steps within the book itself for the frameworks that Tiago invented. So the other one being PARA, which is Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives. And that is just the actionable pieces of the code methodology, where you're not only capturing, but then you're putting it in a certain area. You're not only organizing it, but you're helping to really specify what project it goes under. So there's a lot more that goes into that, and that can be its whole separate video, but we'll get to that, later date. But I will put that video into the description and the show notes, just so that way you guys can also check it out and you don't have to listen to me ramble about it. Because that's not what you're here for at the moment. But yeah, so the path of least resistance in short steps, because you want to make progress. That is a takeaway that I really enjoyed, just because it helps emphasize the importance of making sure that what you are doing is always pushing that needle forward and not just keeping it where it's at. Moving on to number 3, the importance of distillation. So that sounds really weird to say, but it is page 140 to 141 in which it begins, and it is listing out a mistake that he often sees people make when taking notes. So you want to highlight everything. You want to highlight an entire page, because I know there's been points where whether you're in high school, university, where you're told to highlight the important things, and you're looking through and you're reading the passage and you're thinking, oh, that's important. Oh, that next line's important too. You know what? This entire paragraph's important. And then at some point you realize you've highlighted the entire page. It happens. Like, I remember doing this distinctly, and it was super annoying because I had to rethink, okay, what did I actually need to know here? And that's at the heart of this next piece here, because the quote in the book is, distillation is at the heart of the communication that is so central to our friendships, our working relationships, and our leadership abilities, because it centers around communication. And this is me taking, again, the context to be both the physical aspects and the digital aspects. If you are distilling information down into the important tidbits, the really need to know pieces, you can better communicate with your friends, your family, your significant others, your coworkers, your boss. You can better communicate with yourself because you are able to pull up the relevant information to the project, to the task, to the situation, and keep the core pieces very clear and succinct. And the more we practice this, the more we get good at distilling our notes, getting down to the simplest core pieces of it, the better we're going to communicate. And that bleeds into just, again, so many different aspects of our lives and relationships. So I like that a lot, because the practice of distillation is exactly that. It's a practice. You don't just get good at narrowing down your focus to what really matters in this paragraph. So using, again, a textbook, if you have a chapter on, say, marketing, and you're going over how do you create a sales funnel, how do you really engage with a brand and brand identity, how do you foster that? There can be so much in there that you're like, all right, I really need to highlight this and this and this and this. But then the importance comes afterwards, where you go through and then you boil it down further and further and further until you get to the point where you realize, okay, this is the core 3, 4, 5 things that I need to know that ultimately build up a sales funnel, that ultimately build up brand identity, that ultimately build up brand communication, whatever it is. It's the distilling practice that has to be done, and understandably will take time to get right, because it all depends on what you're looking for in that moment. All right, now we move on to the final takeaway that I had, at least a major one. I have other ones in here, but they are more so smaller things that I thought would be great to have as for a quality of life piece. But this one is arguably, to me, the most important. So page 233. I'm just going to read it off here. In a 1966 book, the British-Hungarian philosopher Michael Polanyi made an observation that has since become known as the Polanyi Paradox. It can be summarized as, we know more than we can say. The reason I like that so much is the fact that we can dedicate so much time to what we want to be good at, what we want to be known for, what we really are interested and passionate about. And the wealth of knowledge that we accumulate can honestly be staggering, where we may not fully understand everything that we learn and everything that we know. And there's a term for that. That is called tacit knowledge. And that is knowledge that is held within our subconscious that we'll never actually be able to perfectly describe and put into words. But the more that we learn, the more that we engage with information, something new, with things that interest us, the more we are actually feeding that tacit knowledge, because it is being collected into our subconscious, filed and stored away for us to draw upon when we need it, or when we suddenly have something that triggers us to pull up that piece of information. And for me, this is an encouragement to always have continuous learning be a big part of your life. It's something that I made a video on before, so I recommend that you go check that one out too. But it's just the importance of trying to gather as much information, as many details as possible, because that's going to positively impact your life and what you do. And to further that, it makes it so whenever we collect new information that, again, is very relevant to situations, projects that we're working on, then that can help feed the tacit knowledge that, again, is already in our mind, but we can't always put it into words with ease. Sometimes it takes a trigger, sometimes it takes a response to an outside stimuli or an outside piece of information to really make it all come together. And I liked it so much because it is reassuring, because there can be many points where we read something, we learn something, and it feels like we forget it. But the more we try to learn it, the more we try to understand it, the more it gets ingrained in our skill set, our information set that we can draw upon, even if we're not consciously always thinking about it, because it's always going to be there in our subconscious instead. And for myself, who wants to one day go into public speaking and live events and do things that really are fundamentally teaching, it's very reassuring that I will have information that I will accumulate over time that I won't always be able to put into words until I actually have a reason to. So that was one of my most important takeaways from this book, is the fact that we will always know more. And that's why there's been points where I remembered things that I had no clue I even was aware of it. And that has helped me out, both in, again, improving my memory, but then also just improving quality of life and improving my professional goals and my personal goals. So that's why I think it's so important that we don't neglect to learn, and at the same time, we don't neglect how much we will be able to store away in our mind, and how much building a second brain and organizing our lives will help us to recall these pieces of information when it truly counts. And overall, that means then we can set up our spaces for success both digitally and physically. We can't wait for perfection to begin something. We have to move quickly and touch lightly to make progress. It's important that we can distill information and get down to the core fundamentals to really communicate effectively with others and with ourselves. And we know more than we think, so we should both have confidence in our knowledge and at the same time embrace continuous learning and improvement. This has truly been a great read that I know I'm going to revisit at multiple points throughout my professional and personal life and development, because, again, the author emphasizes how much his system is a tool to be used. It's a tool to add to your kit, to your skill set, that you can draw on when you need it, that will help improve your life, improve your brain capacity, improve every aspect, but it all depends on how you use it and what is important to you in your takeaways. And I certainly plan to revisit this book at multiple points, just so that way I can see what the me of 2023 is going to say to the me of 2024, 2025, whenever I pick up this book again. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment down below if you've read this book, what's been one of your biggest takeaways that has personally impacted your life? Or if you don't have the book yet, comment what has been one of the most interesting takeaways that I've listed out so far in this episode and in this video. But with that, make sure that also while you're commenting down there that you like and subscribe to this on YouTube. And that if you listen to on a podcast app of choice, make sure that you leave us a rating and subscribe to us there as well. Have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode. Go out there and do great things.